Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash and part 2 of Knightfall Part 1, where we continue our deep dive into the first of the Knightfall trilogy. That's Seddon, I'm Lacey. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. I hope you enjoyed part 1, and we will now crack into hopefully a much shorter dive into the second part of the book.
To give you, the viewer, a bit of a heads up, we do talk outside of this, and yes, this one, certainly the part that we're going to do, I think there's a lot less to cover. There's a lot less in the page count, but there's a lot less in the actual kind of story elements that happen. No longer have we got Batman chasing down multiple villains. We are really kind of in the meat of the story now. So yeah, it will be shorter, but also we'll get through the deep dive element of the story, and then at the end of it, we'll come back and talk about our wider impressions of the whole kit and caboodle. What we liked about it, what we didn't like, and particular standout points. But yeah, to save it from being another hour and 44-minute epic, let's crack on with the story. And I guess the truth of it is you transition straight out of the broken bat into the next issue, which is the repercussions of that, which is something that interested me quite a lot, because quite often stories just end, don't they? And then the next issue is the start of a new storyline. But obviously the fact that this is a very, very heavy moment in Batman lore, and a big thing for him, is you get to see the after effects of what happens when a Batman is destroyed.
And yeah, it starts with Alfred and Tim and Jean-Paul basically trying to get Bruce medical attention. So obviously they can't take him to an hospital.
Yeah, and again, an interesting thing, wasn't it, of going once the bat is destroyed there, you can't just kind of rock him up to a normal hospital and go, ta-da! Here is our friend who is not the Batman, I promise.
Skiing accident.
Yeah. And they take him to see Dr. Chandra, which is someone who as we talked about in the last episode, who had kind of camera time as being a doctor by trade, but primarily a psychologist who has been helping Bruce. And they tell some thinly veiled lies, don't they, about how he'd been in a car crash, and she smartly sees through that very quickly. But some great Alfred moments where he goes, oh yeah, he got thrown out of the car, and then hit his back on a rock. That's why it looks like someone's broken his back.
And quickly cover up by tipping the Porsche off the cliff. Quick.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it gives you that view into, I guess, what it's like to maintain a superhero's secret identity, because again, it's parts of the story you don't normally see. Where do superheroes go when they're injured? And I think using that wider cast that they've been establishing, it allows them to have a storyline reason for it. And again, for stuff that I'm sure we're going to see pay off later, give even more reason for Chandra to still be around, to be a character in the story.
So obviously during this point, Bruce is in a coma. So Robin says that he has been told that if anything was to ever happen, Jean-Paul would take up the mantle of the Bat. And they start going out with him being Bat to basically sort of make sure that the facade of the Batman is still there in Gotham.
There's an element they touch on around this, isn't there, about and we mentioned him in the last episode, but the Robin that probably most people know as Robin is Dick Grayson. And there's some touching on that, isn't there, as to why Dick Grayson isn't taking up the mantle. And it's kind of laid out that Bruce had picked Jean-Paul because Dick Grayson had gone on and found his own life and would become the Batman, but become the Batman reluctantly, and he didn't want to push that onto Dick Grayson. So yeah, that's kind of why Jean-Paul is the man to be. And again, quite clever Not clever storytelling, but quite clever, because you wouldn't want the world to necessarily know that the Batman is broken. You know, it's a city full of vile criminals that are going to go absolutely buck wild if they know Batman isn't around anymore. So yeah, trying to keep up this facade of the Bat being there, but of course, Bane knows that the Bat is broken, and while all this is going on, Bane is pretty much taking over the city, isn't he? He approaches a few of the gangs, a few of kind of the more hood gangs, and you know, they talk about how there's no need to go to war because the city's been carved up, and kind of all the criminals have their own areas, and Bane makes it clear of going, no, there's no areas anymore. I run this whole city, and I want everyone to know I run this city. Yeah, you know, going back to his motivations as a character, this was about beating the Bat and taking all of the power, and you know, he's now doing that. He's now making that happen.
It's very much, you know, you get one chance to join him,
yeah,
or he fucks you up.
Yeah. He'll give you the option. He'll say, you can work for me, or you can be destroyed.
So obviously, Jean-Paul as Batman at the beginning still keeps up the efficacy of Batman of "Thou shalt not kill." But we soon see when he goes in to investigate for where Bane is, that he will take matters further than needs be.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, I must admit, and you know, like, we're talking kind of probably about the grander part of this story, but it was quite unsubtle, this part of the story, wasn't it? You know, like, he started to show his loss of temper and his loss of control very, very quickly. Now, of course, you know, potentially that is what would happen, but I couldn't help but feel like he was a really bad pick by Bruce. The way they portrayed him, the way he kind of fell off a cliff, started to fall off a cliff very, very early, and it made you go, well, why did Bruce think that this guy was a good choice and a good option? But as I say, it felt like, when I say unsubtle, it felt like it was because they were, I mean, to give some context for where we are in issues, we were building up to the 500th issue of Batman, which is, you know, a real milestone, and it felt like maybe they rushed this element of the story so that they had something to do in Batman 500.
Yeah. Obviously, also during this point, with Bruce being in a coma, obviously you get everything going on in the background of Alfred trying to tend to him and find ways to help him. They even speak to Lucian to try and find some sort of cure or some way to fix him. And at that point, we get, as you reminded me earlier, because I'd forgot about it actually, in it, the random 3-issue section of the flashback.
And I think it was, I should have written it down, but I didn't. I think it's from one of the anthology books, maybe Shadow of the Bat or something like that. Or but yeah, it's a story set in pre-Bane breaking the Bat, so it's kind of in that Arkham breakout era. But it's a story about Bruce and Robin taking down Two-Face, and you know, it's not altogether a bad story, but it just felt really weirdly paced and placed for this to happen afterwards. It felt like it should have happened before this. You know, it should have happened in continuity at the time, rather than it being sort of put at the end of this collection. And I mean, really, it's a long 3-issue story mechanic to set up Robin going against Batman, and potentially at the risk of the cost of a life, to save him, to save Batman, and Robin having major regrets about this, and Batman kind of waking from his coma to say, no, Robin, you did the right thing. And oddly placed, really stretched out this part longer than it needed to be, I think.
And for what the payoff for the whole thing is,
it
didn't really need to be there. They could have just had a couple of pages of flashback to the final moment of that for him to then have that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done this. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Come out of a coma.
And apologies to anyone who's watching who goes, that was my favourite Batman story of all time. But I mean, again, it just felt like an elongated way of, as you say, just doing something that you could have done in 2 pages, or at worse, a single issue. You know, I don't think there was enough substance in this story to make it need the 3 issues. But you know, someone obviously kind of wrote it and thought that it was great. And again, maybe wouldn't have felt so egregious if it had been placed earlier in the tale, because we'd already seen, you know, Batman go against all these hardships. We didn't need to see another hardship after the fact.
No, it said if it'd been one of those where they'd have done a lesser version of it in the beginning, where maybe you didn't see the end part where you don't see Robin making that choice.
Yeah.
That being the flashback, because obviously that's something that relates to what you've already read, then maybe. But yeah, so it just felt a little bit forced.
Yeah, forced and tacked on, as if someone went, shit, we didn't put Two-Face in. And I like Two-Face, so let's do a Two-Face story.
Yeah. We then obviously get the moment where Bane takes the good doctor and Tim's dad from his house, because of course we've got to have some sort of, you know, link between everyone.
Yeah.
Tim's dad is being treated by the same doctor to help him walk. Again, another one of those of where I get why they do it, because obviously there's a payoff a little bit later on, but again, just felt a bit chucked in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably coming across in the way we're speaking about it is in juxtaposition to the way we were speaking about part one of part one, is that we feel like maybe the pacing and the wheels are falling off a little bit at this stage, and maybe the hearty focus was put into everything leading up to the breaking of the bat. But as you say, I mean, it's a bit unfair, because I think some of the story beats that they're throwing in here feel forced, but I presume that they are to set things up for our next 600 plus page epic when we read what happens after this part of the story.
Yeah, because again, it's another one where obviously Dick turns up as Nightwing.
Yeah.
Because Tim tells him that Jean-Paul is being the Bat and isn't behaving the way he should, and also says about the fact of the position that Bruce is in. And again, he's only there for a couple of pages, and it's like, I know we name dropped him earlier, but again, it just another one of those of just in there for.
And he just repeats, doesn't he? He repeats that bit that we got earlier. You know, he kind of reinforces that Bruce was right. He would have taken over the Bat mantle, but he wouldn't have really wanted to. And you went, well, yeah. I didn't amazingly need that. However, again, to give it some credit, I think this might have a longer term payoff. But yeah, at this stage, it felt like an over-engineered, maybe false scene to pad out a couple of pages, and then, as I say, have a Dick Grayson appearance. Yeah, unnecessary again for me. But as I say, unfair, because you know, I believe there may be Dick Grayson payoffs later down the line.
Yeah. So then, obviously, Bruce, because Bruce is there, isn't he, when the kidnapping happens? I completely forgot about that. Because he's in the wheelchair and tries to muster the strength to try and fight the goons. He's managed to take one down, but obviously has no strength or stamina or ability to take any more. Yeah. So him and Alfred charter a private jet to go off to find them. And of course, they find that there is a rare strain of malaria that they're being dosed with that is only available in one place, which obviously the island where Bane was born. Kept in prison. He obviously gets on the plane, and randomly Selena tries to get on the plane, gets booted off because she needs to go there too, but manages to worm her way in by being stuck in the loo.
Well, there's a little bit of there's a tiny kind of bit of prefix on this, isn't there, where you start to see Bane, as we said earlier, he's taken over the city, and he pretty much says to people, "You work for me," and he does have a scene with Catwoman pre this where he pretty much expressly tells her that, and she kind of flippantly kind of goes, "Oh yeah, whatever you think, but I'll do this job you want me to do." So yeah, I think they're kind of setting up that tension between Catwoman and Bane, and also probably unfortunately because of having read later on stuff, that connectivity between Catwoman and Batman is that Catwoman is essentially a villain, but kind of that lighter side of villain, isn't she? She tends to be at odds with Batman over the pettiness of crime and theft, but not necessarily your Joker-esque villain. She's not out there to cause chaos and kill people. She's out there to take care of herself and the people around her. So yeah, I mean, we said we talked about it slightly off the show, but that we've mentioned some of the art before. But the part where they do the "Ooh, I was stuck in the toilet." It's I don't think it's particularly well drawn. I think it is Selena. We know it's Selena, but I think it's more by luck than judgment. They don't really make that clear, other than going, okay, she looks kind of like how the dude drew her when she was in her Catwoman suit.
Yeah. Obviously, we know where that storyline goes because I think it was last year or the year before. Obviously, Batman and Catwoman get married because they are a love interest in modern turn. But yeah, again, it is. Obviously, we know where they're off to and why they're going there, but again, it just...
Yeah. It's arms up the back forced, isn't it? Like, you go in, you're trying to just knit. Sometimes knitting everything together doesn't work. You just need to kind of let it flow. It could have gone anywhere, done anything. It can just feel too forced, can't it?
And the thing is, for what they are, obviously, as I said, we've only done book one, so it may all make a whole load more sense when we crack into book two. It just seems to be there for the sake of being there, but I'm hoping that obviously the reasoning and payoffs are all
there's something in there, isn't there, of going like sometimes you need to put these bits in place because they have a big payoff at a later date. However, it lacked smart writing for me. This felt like a bit more of a, oh my god, what shit, we need them to be there in 10 issues time. How are we going to get them there? Oh, let's quickly write that bit in. And too many coincidences at this point, and lack some of the kind of the finer finesse that maybe they were showing 12, 14, 20 plus issues ago when they were laying out this story.
Yeah. But what we do get is the wonderful Jean-Paul and him taking over the mantle and making his own version of the Bat.
Lovely bracelets. That's what I took from that the early days of the Jean-Paul Bat.
Obviously, he will quite happily kill and use as much force as needed. So he develops a set of claws, which are absolutely wonderful. At this point, we get the return of Scarecrow and his wonderful idea of how to take over Gotham, where it starts with him taking over a school classroom, putting them in what look like Stormtrooper-style helmets. I don't know if they're meant to be VR or something, filling them with fear toxin and making himself a little Scarecrow army, and getting hologram projectors to put his vision across the whole of Gotham, and has fear gas bombs everywhere. Jean-Paul in this point is then taking them all down when he then finds Bane, and we get our first big fight.
I was going to say, very quickly before we move on to the fight, I think we can all agree that that's the best use for children, is to turn them all into your own little Scarecrow army.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what we should be doing with the future generation, is turn them into our minions. But yeah, I mean, like, kind of, yeah, it was. I mean, there are some holdovers, aren't there? There's some holdover bits around some of the villains from the Arkham time, because and after the love I showed for him in the previous story, I don't feel like we can also forget that we had the kind of tail end, or I say the tail end for now, of the ventriloquist story, where he actually does get reunited with Scarface, and you get a lovely scene where he's sat on a bed and he's got Scarface on one hand and Socko on the other, and let's just say that Mr. Sock isn't too impressed with Scarface, and doesn't see what all the fuss was about. And then you get a great moment where Scarface pulls out an Uzi and Socko pulls out a gun, and you cut to outside the room, and you get the telltale comic book signs like the rat-a-tat-tat and the brat-rat-braps, and you cut back into the room to see the ventriloquist kind of slumped out, both dolls like either side strewn, and blood coming out of his hands and arms where he shot itself. So it is touching on some of the bits that they laid in before, and of course the coming back to Scarecrow is another kind of holdover from the previous part of the story.
Yeah, so obviously we then, as I said, we get that fight where Bane very blatantly says to Jean-Paul, "You're not Batman. You're cosplaying. You're not the Bat." He obviously doesn't break him the same way that he broke the real Batman, but he gives him a hiding. Very much I know that you are not the true one. I am going to kick your ass for trying to pretend.
He felt a lot more sort of carefree with this, didn't he? You know, like he said, as you say, straight away he goes, "You're not the Batman," and so he has no intention of doing anything other than what he's done with any of the other villains he's come across or anything like that. And it's just, I'm going to beat the crap out of you because you're nothing to me, which I imagine again is something that's going to get into the new Batman's mindset of going, well, what do you mean I'm nothing? I'm not the real Batman. And as you say, it doesn't break him, but actually just tries to kind of kill him, doesn't he? Like he just beats the tar out of him and kind of levers him out as if you're an afterthought and you can die. And it's only his newfound claws that really kind of save him. And I guess it sets that seed into his mind of going, well, one, I've just had my arse handed to me quite handily by this Bane fella, and also the only thing that really helped me was modification to the suit. You know, I need more out of the suit. I need something to kind of help me here, which again pays off in the not too distant future.
Yeah, so obviously he goes back to the Batcave, goes into some weird trancey thing where he can then, you know, I think it's something to do with his Templar upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you felt, but this is a bit where I felt like I needed to have read, and probably what should have been in this volume, but God, you couldn't want to make this volume any bigger, but maybe a bit more of that backstory of Azrael, Jean-Paul, and what that actually means. Because, yeah, I think there's a mythos bits that it goes into here, which you say, like, he's kind of, I think the concept is that almost he is the chosen one of the Templars, and that's why he doesn't mind killing, because they're almost brainwashed, programmed to do the bidding of this group, and that is anything. But yeah, again, for the 3 issues that we got revisiting a story from the past of Two-Face, I felt like maybe a bit more Jean-Paul flesh out of why this is happening would have been a better use of time here.
Yeah, because I said there is no callback to Azrael.
Yeah, you're just kind of expected to know, aren't you? And
yeah, which is a little bit of a failure of it, because as I said, they mention bits, as I said, about like this brainwashing and things like that, and it's just like, but what does it mean?
Yeah.
If they're happy enough to put in the first issue of Bane, in there as a collection, it does miss that.
Or even if it had maybe a better bit of exposition, like a 2-page spread, which gives us I said to you, like, when we were talking about the first part of this, I mean, we're first introduced to him in this story as getting his hair cut by Robin. Well, maybe like at the beginning of this story, give us like a 1-page potted history, like what got us to this point. And I understand it's serial fiction, so they've told this story, but it was, I don't know, I think it's Stan Lee, wasn't it, who said just consider every comic might be someone's first, and just give them those bits. I felt like the fact that he became Batman and very, very quickly in this is that somewhere in the bulk of this, in the many pages we had to read, there should have been just a lot more about who he is, why he is, and what his restrictions could be.
Yeah. So obviously he gets the mech suit, as I will call it, because it basically looks like it should be an anime mech suit. And then we get our three part run, which was episode 500 of the new Bat, basically going to find Bane and to kick off with Bane.
Before we jump into the fight with Bane, we can't. I know we could do this at the end, but let's do it now. What did we think of the Bat mech suit?
I liked it enough on the fact that it makes it clearly a differential between who is who. I would never want to see Bruce in it, but for Jean-Paul, I quite liked it. And the thing is, it's his one-up against Bane's Venom.
Yeah. And I mean, like, visually, like, design-wise, I thought it looked horrible. And that was a real shame for me because, I think it's hard in such a visual medium not to be affected by seeing it and kind of going, oh, God. But, yeah, from a storyline purpose, as I say, like a couple of issues beforehand, they layered in this bit that's saying, like, it was only his added bit of tech that really saved him. So you can see why he went for a tech armor. And as you say, I think you're looking for stuff that puts a clear line between Bruce Bat and Jean-Paul Bat. And okay, fundamentally, we're already seeing that the difference is that Bruce has like this code that he won't break, and Jean-Paul doesn't do that. But yeah, I think having a visual difference aids that, doesn't it? To kind of go, when they're on scene, when they're in the book, when they're on camera, whatever, which one's which, and it's easy to kind of differentiate between the two. As I say, I just think it's really poorly designed. And the one thing I'll throw in for context, though, is, and again, this is the context of, we spoke a little about in last episode about what was going on in the comic book world at the time. And as I say, like, coming off the back of the boom time of the late 80s, early 90s, where everything went a bit extreme and everyone was getting kind of jagged edges on their outfits. And it was quite a Marvel thing for people to start wearing armor when they'd never worn armor before. I think around this time we'd had, and again, I'd have to check. So some of these might be before or after, but we'd had like Thor start wearing armor. We'd had Daredevil in Marvel comics do it, and even in DC, I think they did the Justice League of America, but the kind of Booster Gold group, and I think they released a comic book called Justice League Extreme, where all of a sudden they're all wearing mech kind of armors. So unfortunately, when I remember seeing that vision, I said like I didn't read it, but there's a few things I kind of distinctly remember. I remember seeing that in kind of like previews mags and stuff like that, and just it put me off because it's just like, oh God, they're going into that kind of everyone has to have armor trope, but it was a done thing at the time. So and as I say, having read that bit through, as gross as it looks to me, I do think they layer in good story reasons for it. this guy will do whatever it takes to win, and if that means augmenting himself by augmenting his armor, then he will do. Whereas obviously Bruce always had stuff in his utility belt, but it was always the man against them and with some extra bits rather than kind of, as I say, building up the armor. So I can see it, but my God, someone should have had a few more runs over this and gone, we can make something look smarter, nicer than this.
I think it's the one thing that, obviously we'll go into it more like at the end when we sort of do an overview of it, but I think it's the one thing that ages this.
Yeah, it does. It does fill off its time as a design, doesn't it?
Yeah, because obviously the rest of it, obviously we'll obviously like everyone else in there is as they would normally be. Obviously there is those few design bits that look a little bit like the animated series for that bit of crossover, but Bat Metal is very much of its time.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I don't know whether they've reused it since, but I reckon they'd reuse it sparingly, and probably only for comedy at this stage. If they, I don't know, like say if someone did a storyline now where they got the armor out and stuck it back on again, I'm sure it would be for comedy fashion rather than for effectively it would look good.
Well, put it this way, it's not. It was never put as one of the DLC bat skins on any of the games.
And that's
so that says, when they're doing even like I can't remember what run it is of the cartoon, but the really skinny black one with the red bat symbol.
Oh, Batman
really
Beyond.
Big, the really big ears. Yeah. They'd put that in, but they wouldn't put this in.
Yeah. Well, maybe while we're writing down our comic book ideas, so we've got the Ventriloquist ongoing that will go to 500 issues. We've got Ghost Nun, and maybe between the two of us, we can revive this bat armor. It will take some effort, but we'll put our thinking caps on post show to see if we can find a way to make the bat armor usable again.
Just have the Ventriloquist puts Socko in it, and Socko has super armor.
See, I'd be up for a bit of Socko armor. That would be cool. A little mech Socko suit.
So we get the big payoff, which is a fight between Bane and Mech Warrior, and it is visually really, really well done. It's a fight on I would say subway car, but it's not because it's overground. Monorail. That's the one.
Yeah.
Because, remember Simpsons.
If you ever don't know the answer to something, just scan your Simpsons knowledge and see if it is in an episode of that.
So they've obviously scrapping on there. This point is where Tim says about not hurting anyone else or not letting it get to Carnage. But Jean-Paul gives zero fucks as he basically slams the train so it's going to fly off, could cause as much carnage as possible, doesn't care about casualties, just wants to fight Bane.
Yeah, it's that focus, isn't it? It's that focus. Jean-Paul's focus is, in fact, like it kind of shows him as more Bane-like than Bruce-like, doesn't it? Of going, he's got that kind of singular purpose, and Bane is it in the same way as Bruce was for Bane, and the sanctity of human life means very little. The victory or the stopping the bad guy is what he really is going to go for above all else.
Yeah. And then obviously we get a massive crash, as you would expect. Bane is down, Bat Metal comes out, and we end with Robin basically sort of chastising him for what he's done, and Jean-Paul basically saying he gives zero fucks about Robin's opinion.
Yeah,
I am the Bat now.
Yeah, it is him taking that mantle, isn't it? As you say, I think it's spot on about that zero fucks, especially is up until him being named Batman. we had seen that where like Tim Drake, Robin had been put in charge of Jean Paul, hadn't he? You know, he was almost teaching him. And you know, like it just goes to show how quickly. And again, we'll get to this at the end around the pacing side of it. But how quickly he goes from I'm in charge now, fuck who, you know, like you're nothing to me. I don't even need nor want your opinion. I'm in charge now. Again, very very Bane-esque. You know, there's so many. I guess what this is showing is there's so many more similarities between him and Bane, more so than him and Bruce.
Yeah. So that is what the second part of the book is. So overall, what would you say with this? Is it a tale of two halves? Or is it one that's perfect and another that
it's
just struggles?
A tale of 2/3, I'd say. Like, because again, you look at like the page count, and I think up until the bat breaking, I think it's paced really well. The fact that we talked for nearly 2 hours about it, I think talks about the amount of content that was stuffed within it and the amount of content. And again, there's loads of stuff we didn't touch on. That's how much is there. And not just because of the literal amount of issues there are, but I think the amount of effort they put into so many characters around it. And again, really, you could have easily just said, Batman fights lots of people and he's knackered. But I think you really felt in that first 2/3, again, up until the breaking point, is you felt the attrition that he was feeling. And I think that pacing did that so well. And I mean, partially, I guess the argument could be the way the volumes are split out. So I think you end it there. I think you're going great. I think, bizarrely enough, the way that they paced out the volume to then take us beyond that to the issue 500 of the Jean Paul fight against Batman. I think actually that's a volume 2. Now we'll find out when we start reading volume 2 maybe why they put that in the volume 1. Like maybe they did feel like it was a natural break point in the story, but the bat breaking is the end for me. I think if we'd have stopped there, or if that volume had stopped there, I'd have gone wow, and I can't wait to come back and see what happens next. Whereas seeing what happens next in a smallish snippet, because it's done much more expediently, and I think with a lot less care, and I think probably to get it done by issue 500 makes me a little bit more fearful for what we're going to get out of volume 2. But yeah, really really good up until the bat being broken.
Yeah, I get they wanted something massive for 500, but you could have quite easily even made the pace a little bit slower for the beginning part to have the break be issue 500.
Yeah. In fact, I'm just sorry. I'm just trying to see what issue it was that the break happened. So that happened in 497. So you're only looking at like extending that 3 more issues. And I know they were running stories in Detective Comics at the same time. But you know what we said about that Two-Face story? So potentially, rather than having that Two-Face story after this and published in an anthology series, maybe you have that run across 2 issues of Batman, 1 issue of Detective. But I think that maybe that was your issue 500 moment. But possibly it speaks to the time, because you know anniversary issues in comics, certainly back then, traditionally were your big sellers. I think now in the comic book industries, it's your issue 1s. That's why everything gets rebooted so regularly. But people really would come out in droves for 400, 450, 500. I think breaking the bat was a big enough moment for 500. But I can see why in their head they went, introduction of the new Batman and his new metal suit is our issue 500 moment.
500.
But yeah, just and again, you've only got so many, you've only got so much time to tell a story. And could they have afforded another 14, 15 issues to see post the post the Batman's backbreaking, Jean Paul getting in. I mean, I think that Jean Paul becoming Batman and turning into what we already see him 3, 4, 5 issues later, I think that's a much longer story for me. I think that's something I would want to see told over a year or two's worth of stories, to see him slowly start to kind of descend into a different sort of Batman, and probably show a lot more. Yeah, and show a lot more of the world of Bane. You know, like what is Gotham under Bane like, and you know, maybe John Paul goes off the edge because it's so brutal under Bane that he can't stop the bad stuff from happening, no matter how much he tries. And he gets, you know, like we saw Bruce be pushed mentally and physically to the edge. Like, how do you push John Paul mentally and physically to the edge? Well, actually, probably the thing that's going to push him is failing more than anything else, and maybe see him fail a bit over that time, so he then has to get a little bit more brutal, or I don't know. I mean, you couldn't really do it with Tim Drake because we'd seen a Robin die recently, but maybe an innocent taking a shoe-in because he failed, and that going, I'll never fail anyone again. And I don't know. Yeah, pacing's problematic for me in this last third.
Yeah, it's that thing of, unless there's something in the Azrael backstory that we really needed to know.
Yeah.
Which the thing is, if it's, you've got, I know, as we've always said, obviously it's long-term storytelling, and you know there's always that stuff. But for something like this, if there is something in his backstory that we need to know, on why he just, I'm gonna go fucking murder everyone. I will fucking use violence and force and push people to their very limits because I want answers. There should be that bit that just sort of goes, right, this is because this is how he's programmed. This is how the Templars work.
It feels like a failing of this chunk of story not to make him a more defined character. Because, you know, we only really see snippets of him during this. In fact, I did write in my notes earlier, and I forgot to do it when we were talking about it, but as much as I do not like the Bat Metal suit, there is at one point where they rock him out. He goes out on a mission on his own in his Azrael suit. And God, that's even worse designed. It's black with a giant A on it. It's terrible. So like, yeah, he really shouldn't be allowed in charge of design. But I don't think we get enough of him. Like, when he takes up that mantle of Batman in this volume, I go, really? Why?
Yeah.
Like, and I think, again, no matter how much they've done with him before, I needed a clearer idea of why they went for him. So yeah, you know, like the same writers. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm talking about like the first part of it as something that I think is really, really good. Has some failings, has some clunky exposition points, has some more simplistic and bang your head over the hammer story points. But I think as a whole, I think it's really good. I do. I think it's really, really good. I would recommend it. I'd recommend it to a Batman fan. I'd recommend it to a non-Batman fan. I tend to steer towards someone who likes superhero stuff, and probably someone who's had some experience with Batman, maybe through the TV and the films. Everything post the Bat being broken, I struggle, and as I say, I think maybe it will be a bit clearer for me when we've done volume 2. But as it stands at the moment, I think despite it not being like half of the story, I think you're spot on with that tale of two halves of going. It goes wonky very quickly afterwards.
Yeah, to me, it was just, and I hate to say it because obviously we haven't done the whole story and sort of know what the final payoffs are, but it's just one of those of, it just seems as though that was like, oh fuck, we've got 3 issues to get to the big fight. It's fine. Look, he's gone mad. He's going to kill everyone. Shit, we need to tell where Bruce is and why Bruce is there. Oh, he's gone off on a plane because they've nicked Tim Drake's dad. Oh, why is Selena there? Oh, she got nipped up, jump on the plane. Fine, that's that time.
Well, and like, I mean, I guess the one thing that we don't know, and we can probably look it up, but of course, it's always to be someone's version of the truth. But I think quite often when they've got stories of this length, I mean, most of this was written by Chuck Dixon and Doug Munch, and Denny O'Neil was the editor. So I imagine they probably went away and they probably planned the story beats that they wanted to hit over this long arc. But what you don't know is the pressures that come with the company. You know, as I say, this was an absolute boom period for comics, and they may well have knew exactly the pacing they wanted to do, but that doesn't stop someone from the company coming along and going, right, we need something big for issue 500, and we quite like the idea of all these armored heroes that are out there at the moment. Give us Batmetal for 500. So they might have had to pick up the pace, but touching on what you were saying there, I mean, like, long-term storytelling, the best stuff is the jigsaw pieces are placed all the way through the story, and you continue putting jigsaw pieces out, and they pay off and they pay off and they pay off. Whereas it felt like in the space of a very short amount of story, they threw a load of jigsaw pieces at us and said they're going to pay off in a minute. Whereas earlier on in the story, they were done at smarter intervals. You know, they were paced very nicely, and you went, okay, I'm going to see that come to fruition in 5 or 6 issues time. Whereas this felt like, oh bugger, what are we going to do after 500? Oh, we better set up all this shit very quickly before 500 so we can rush off to the next part of the story.
Yeah. So it is one that I would definitely, as you say, it's one that I think anyone that has any sort of interest in it should definitely read up to the break. I think we can't say that you have to read past that until we've read past it to see where it goes. We might
for be you guys. For you guys, we're going to do it. We are coming back to doing Knightfall part 2. Now, it's not going to be our next view, but we are going to do it. There'll be a deep dive on that. So we are going to do the whole kit and caboodle. So you will get our impressions of the whole story.
All 655 pages of Night Quest part 2.
I'm a little bit scared. Don't read that when you're in bed, because I fear that I'm going to get a message from you saying I can't record because I'm concussed because the book fell on my face in the night. But yeah, I think you are right. I think it is hard to judge it as a whole piece without having read the whole piece and see where it goes. What was your favourite part of it? Actually, that's a bit unfair. Give us like a couple of your favourite bits, because I think favourite bit is probably too reductive in a story this long. But like, if there was a few standout moments, what kind of really got you interested and maybe got you wanting to learn more or read more?
So the beginning part, when we had Mad Hatter and when we had like the work between Joker and Scarecrow, the first section, I was just banging through it because it kept me hooked, because I was like, oh, so he's done that, but oh, there's them. What are they going to go up to? And it just kept going. Obviously, there was a couple of bits when Firefly was there, or the Zaz one. It was like, but then there'd be that little bit in the background of, oh, there's Joker and Scarecrow. What are they going to do next? And I think that was really well paced for the beginning bit to make you just want to. I'll do another chapter. Oh no, I'll do another chapter. Or another book, because they're not chapters in that, they're actual books.
They quite often ended some of the issues almost very cliffhangery, didn't they? Like, it's almost like at the crux of a fight, or something relatively big had just happened. So you kind of, and again, it must have been really difficult when you're having to wait monthly for it. But like, for us, you could just turn the page, but it made you want to turn the page and read the next bit. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that.
But if it was going to sort of twist my arm and say what's the big bit, it's clearly the fight and the break, because it's such a momentous moment in Batman canon.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as we say, like picked up on in Dark Knight Rises, and I think there's a reason why that was in Nolan's head, you know, like because I think it probably was a standout moment for him, and again, as a visual, it's great, isn't it? You know, like you see it and you just go, wow, like I've never broken someone's back over a knee, but I imagine that's somewhat what it would look like if someone did it, and it kind of really does stand out there in iconic comic book moments. So yeah, I think you're spot on. Is that's the payoff, isn't it? That's the big payoff for this part of the story. And as I say, I totally agree with you on kind of that early part of, and you know, like not everything can be gold. And I think probably like for you and I sat here, the ones that maybe resonate with us, maybe there is someone out there who the Firefly story particularly resonated with them or whatever. But for me, I know I banged on about it in the last episode, but Jesus Christ, I want to read more Ventriloquist now. Like, and for a bit part player, like that was done so well. And also the other one that I really want to, and I will. I mean, I don't know what we'll see in the next volume, but I think even post us doing that, I will hunt down some sort of subsequent storylines. The Riddler, the way they kind of offhandedly dealt with him here, but I think deliberately offhandedly dealt him to almost kind of knock him down the pecking order. I'm kind of really interested to see why and what the long-term story of that is. You know, like why is he gone from probably, as I say, for people who knew the TV show, you kind of remembered the villains from the TV show because they were the villains from the TV show. But why there was kind of this deliberate edge there to kind of go, now, do you know what, like, he's a bit of a joke, really, isn't he? And you know, look, he probably is, like if he existed in the real world. But yeah, made me want to read more stories about some of the other players and Montoya, the copper. And unfortunately, it's a little bit of a cheat because I have read some stuff with her later on, and she is a fantastic character. But I can see the nuggets of it here. So yeah, for me, that was a standout of making me want to read more Batman, which in serialized fiction, surely, like, job done. If it makes you want to read more, then they've knocked it out of the park.
It said I would definitely like any ventriloquist stuff, Mad Hatter stuff. I'm all over that. Obviously, Joker's Riddler's a weird one at this point because they're trying to do something with him at this point, but then obviously when Batman Forever comes out, I think that's when they go back to him being more 66 style wacky.
Yeah,
because of what Jim Carrey does with him.
Yeah, I guess you can see that, isn't it? You know, it's a company trying to make money, isn't it? And you know, if you're having a major motion picture made where it's portrayed in a certain way, then again, the publishing arm probably is forced to go follow this because you know, like we stuck a load of money into this movie, so we want it to be a success.
But then, if you look where they got to for the new 52 version, they've completely changed him again to being quite evil and
and I think
his riddles and things. So
I think that's one of the things that makes me want to read a bit more from this period because, as you say, I know from the new 52 and what a great depiction of him, and I kind of want to see another side of him, see why that was done, because it just doesn't. Having seen him done brilliantly, I kind of want to see what writers who don't see that level of villainy in him do with him. And you know, I think that probably smart, isn't it? Like either way, you either make him a major villain and give that some substance, or you go, this guy's a bit of a joke and you portray him as a joke, but you do something with that. You know, you actually pay off on that storyline. You don't just kind of I don't know, take liberties with him. But yeah, so really interested in seeing some other stuff. Where does this sit on your kind of pantheon of Batman stories? Does it break into the top end of some of the ones you love, or do you think it's outside of that?
At the minute, it's sort of borderline just outside of like the big boys. It's not there with Hush. It's not there with The Long Halloween, the Death in the Family, the 52 run. They are still there, but then as I said, at the minute we are only part way into it. So, you know, who knows? Once we've read all 3 bits, it might, you know, go gold and sort of bump its way up a few some of them. But yeah, no, things like Hush and Long Halloween and Dark Knight Return and that sort of stuff still up there.
From what I've read of it so far, like I would certainly put it on the layer below. This feels like probably the writers aren't ones that I've read tons of. I've read a bit of Chuck Dixon along the way, did some Marvel stuff, and I would say that this feels like probably, certainly in the case of the stuff I've read of Chuck Dixon, is Chuck Dixon's best stuff. So this feels like, to me, like probably a decent writer writing his best and it producing something really good. Whereas I think for a lot of the other stuff that we have in the upper echelon pantheon, it is great writers doing some of their best stuff, and that probably is where it slightly differentiates for me. But yeah, really kind of really solid, really good story. And again, especially up to the breaking of the bat, I think they do great stuff with that.
So yeah, so it's definitely one that I would say people should read.
Yeah.
So what is next for us for the next episode? I think we lighten it up a little bit, and we do a top 5.
Yeah, well, I think after such a deep dive, and this is a deep dive, as Chris showed you, like, geez, man, the size of these books, and that is a lot of content about a specific story, isn't it? It's not like saying, you know, we don't like reading, but, you know, like, that is a lot to take in of one big storyline. So yeah, so the intent is to do part 2, but we want to give ourselves a little bit of a break from reading this storyline to let us recharge our batteries and come back. So yeah, I think we'll come back next week with a top 5. You got any flavour for what you might fancy?
Non-mainstream comic book films. So it can't be, you know, just picking 5 out of the Avengers set.
So like kind of non-MCU, non-DC.
So they can be DC and they can be Marvel, but just not any of, like, you know, you can't pick the Dark Knight and Batman, and you can't pick any of the Avengers.
Yeah, I'm up for that, because again, I think, you know, as we say, like, it's Seddon and Laceys comic stash, and we do want to talk about comics, but we know that comics have become such a bigger, wider thing, you know, like, and I say has become such a bigger, wider thing. We talked about an origin episode, like both of us started off watching superheroes on TV, and I think, like, that's what we want to do. We kind of want to talk about the content that is out there. So yeah, I'm down for that. God, this is going to be tough though, mate. What I might have to do is no, I was going to say I might have to give you a sneak peek to make sure I'm not cheating, but no sneak peeking.
So the rules are.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. Come on, yeah.
Rules. So can't be anything that is in the Avengers arc. So nothing from Iron Man through to Endgame.
Yep.
Can't be any of the main Superman or Batman run.
Yep.
So that includes Justice League, which of course no one's going to do that anyway.
Yep.
And other than that, it can be fair game.
Oh, cool. Looking forward to it. And yeah, as I say, I mean, like, there's some great stuff out there, isn't there? And for me, you know, like, we said it on the origin, we said it on the top 5. It's a bit of a getting to know you. So when this releases, what we'll do is I'll push something out via the Facebook, and obviously we'll do it on this to try and get some like of the listeners' feedback on probably their kind of non-mainstream Marvel stuff, so we can do our top 5s and hopefully get a bit of feedback from you guys out there to see what superhero movies you love, and hopefully they'll be similar to ours, or maybe you'll learn something from us.
That we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot out there, isn't there? And just to clarify on the rules, when we say, are we saying non-main? Oh, sorry. is it superhero movies or
Yes.
is it based off a comic book?
So comic book movies are based off comic book / superhero to the point, not that you can't pick a Kira.
Yeah, well, and again, I was thinking, and not that that necessarily I'd have gone for any of them, but we have seen some kind of movie interpretations of some kind of indie crime comics, horror comics, and things like that. But yeah, I'll stick in the lane. I'll go superheroes based off a comic.
And that is what you've got coming up next time. Again, as always, like, subscribe, rate, ring bells, do all the shiznitch that they do on the YouTubes. Comments what you think of Knightfall, if you have read book 1. As always, follow the channel and the other content. Seddon's wonderful pop vids, Stu's wonderful gaming vids, the Friday show of wonderfulness. That always the treat, because you never know where it's going to go.
I certainly don't, and I'm on it.
And until next time, we bid you adieu.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.